Discipline is often described as a battle against yourself, a war between who you are and who you think you should be. This idea is so common, so normalized, that most people never question it. They assume discipline must feel heavy, that progress must hurt, that improvement requires pressure, and that the critical voice in their head is proof they are doing the work. But this is not discipline. This is internal conflict disguised as virtue. In many Japanese traditions, discipline was never taught as self-conquest. The samurai did not train by hating who they were, or by attacking their weaknesses, or by forcing themselves into shape through inner violence. That idea, the idea that you must dominate yourself, is not refinement. It is fragmentation. The belief that discipline means overcoming yourself creates a split. One part of you acting as judge, and another part standing trial. This split is the origin of the critical mind, and once it forms, everything becomes a performance. You are no longer acting from clarity. You are acting to correct, to fix, to compensate, to prove. Japanese philosophy understood this danger deeply. This is why the concept of moshin, or no mind, was not about emptiness, but about removal. Not removal of effort, but removal of interference. When the mind is crowded with judgment, the action becomes distorted. When the mind is crowded with comparison, the movement loses precision. When the mind is crowded with self-criticism, the body hesitates, even when it knows what to do. True discipline, in this view, is not forcing yourself to act, but clearing the internal noise that prevents natural action from occurring. This is where most people misunderstand refinement. They believe refinement means becoming someone else. But refinement, in Japanese traditions, meant becoming less distorted, less reactive, less divided, less occupied with self-assessment. Now here is where the illusion tightens. Because the critical mind does not feel aggressive at first, it feels responsible. It says things like, "You should be better by now. You know more than this." And because this voice uses logic and improvement language, people trust it. But this voice is not wisdom. It is hansei misused. Hansei, which means reflection, was never intended to be self-punishment. It was meant to be light, precise, and brief. Observe, adjust, move on. But when reflection becomes identity, when you are constantly measuring yourself against an imagined future version, the mirror becomes heavy. This is the man who appears disciplined, but feels restless inside, calm on the outside, rushed on the inside. He knows the language of mastery. He understands the concepts. He has studied discipline, but his energy leaks through constant self-evaluation. He is not refining himself, he is monitoring himself, and monitoring creates tension, not power. A samurai did not stand in battle thinking, "Am I doing this correctly? Am I living up to my potential? Am I disciplined enough?" That would be fatal. Action had to be clean, undivided, and unburdened by commentary. This is the difference between inner steel and inner pressure. Pressure fractures, steel holds. The critical mind believes it is helping you evolve, but evolution does not come from compression. It comes from coherence. When you stop fighting yourself, energy reorganizes naturally. This is uncomfortable for the ego, because it loses its role as overseer. And this is why men cling to self-criticism, even when it exhausts them. They believe without it, they would become lazy, undisciplined, or weak. But the samurai knew something most people have forgotten. A divided mind is weak, even if it looks intense. A unified mind is dangerous, even when it looks calm. So before we talk about inner steel, before we talk about energy, before we talk about mastery, we must dismantle the first illusion. That discipline requires you to conquer yourself. It never did. It requires you to stop attacking the part of you that already knows how to act. And in the next section, we will enter the inner state, where the critical voice dissolves, not because it is silenced, but because it is no longer needed. Are you ready to step inside that state, and see what remains, when the war ends? Let's begin. The critical mind does not disappear through resistance. It dissolves through understanding. Most people believe the critical voice exists, because they are not disciplined enough, not focused enough, not committed enough. But the opposite is true. The critical mind forms when discipline is attempted without inner alignment. It appears when action is driven by identity pressure, rather than internal clarity. This is why people who try harder often become more rigid, more tense, and more self-hostile over time. They are applying force to a system that requires coherence. In Japanese philosophy, the inner state always preceded the outer act. Posture, breath, presence, and timing were not details. They were everything. A disturbed inner state produces noisy action. A quiet inner state produces precise action. The samurai did not seek motivation. They sought readiness. Readiness is not emotional intensity. It is the absence of internal argument. This is where most people misunderstand their exhaustion. They assume they are tired because they are doing too much. But often, they are tired because they are negotiating with themselves constantly. Every task becomes a debate. Every action is preceded by commentary, judgment, comparison, and mental rehearsal. This inner friction drains energy faster than effort ever could. The disciplined inner state feels very different. There is no internal speech pushing you forward. No inner whip. No mental countdown. No threat of future regret. Those voices belong to supervision, not mastery. In a coherent inner state, action arises before explanation. You move, and only later, if at all, does the mind narrate what happened. This is motion in practice. Not emptiness, but unobstructed flow. Now here is the shift most people miss. The critical mind is not loud by nature. It becomes loud when it believes it is responsible for outcomes. When the mind believes it must manage results. It inserts itself into every movement, correction, anticipation, second-guessing, self-monitoring. But mastery does not come from management. It comes from trust in structure. The samurai trained structure into the body, into timing, into awareness, so the mind could step back. This is why inner steel feels impersonal. It is not emotional. It is not self-referential. It does not ask, "How am I doing?" because asking that question collapses presence. Steel does not observe itself being steel. It simply holds form under pressure. This is why discipline rooted in inner steel feels strangely quiet, almost invisible. There is no drama in it, no identity attached, no story to tell afterward. And this is deeply unsettling for the ego. Because the ego survives through commentary. When there is no internal narration, the ego loses relevance. This is why people unconsciously cling to the critical voice. Not because it helps them, but because it confirms their existence as someone becoming. But the samurai path was never about becoming. It was about being stable in motion. When the inner state stabilizes, discipline becomes neutral. Not exciting, not punishing, not heroic, just clear. You do not feel disciplined. You feel aligned. This is the moment energy consolidates. You become quieter, but heavier, slower, but harder to move off center. Your presence sharpens, even when your effort decreases. This is inner steel forming, not through intensity, but through subtraction. The critical mind cannot survive here, because there is nothing left for it to correct. No split, no argument, no imagined future self to measure against. Only action, arising from coherence. Now, we will look directly at the mirror figure, the one who embodies this state so completely, that his presence alone reorganizes the room. Not through dominance, not through intensity, not through words, but through the quiet authority of inner steel. This is where discipline becomes visible as energy, not effort. And once you recognize it, you will never confuse pressure for power again. Let's move to the final mirror. There is a kind of man, a kind of presence, that does not correct you, yet leaves you unsettled. Not because he intimidates, not because he dominates, not because he demands anything from you, but because when you stand near him, something in you becomes obvious. Your unnecessary movements, your inner noise, your self-commentary. This is the mirror figure. In Japanese tradition, this man was never described as intense. He was described as settled, grounded, contained, undivided. He did not radiate urgency. He radiated inevitability. When he moved, there was no excess, no explanation, no rehearsal, no emotional preparation. Movement arose because movement was required. This is what most people misunderstand about mastery. They imagine confidence as projection, but projection leaks energy. The samurai did not project. They occupied their space fully. And when a man occupies himself completely, there is nothing left to perform. This is why the mirror figure feels confronting. He does not criticize you, but your critical mind cannot hide around him. Because in his presence, your inner argument becomes loud, your rushing becomes visible, your constant self-adjustment becomes obvious. Not to him, but to you. This is the mirror. And this is why so many people misunderstand strength. They think strength looks aggressive, assertive, forceful. But force is often compensation. True strength does not need to announce itself. It stabilizes the field without effort. The samurai understood this deeply. They trained not to overpower opponents, but to remove hesitation. Hesitation was more dangerous than fear. And hesitation always comes from division. From thinking instead of being, from correcting instead of aligning, from judging instead of moving. This is why the mirror figure feels dangerous. Not because he is violent, but because he is unavailable to manipulation. He cannot be rushed. He cannot be pulled into reaction. He cannot be destabilized through emotional pressure, because there is no internal committee inside him. No debate, no commentary, no self-management system running in the background. Only presence. This is inner steel fully formed. And here is the part most people are not prepared to hear. The mirror figure was never created through harshness. He was not forged by constant self-criticism. He was not shaped by punishment, or obsession with improvement, or endless self-reflection. Those paths produce tension, not authority. Inner steel emerges when the war ends. When the mind stops policing the body, and the body is trusted again. When action is allowed to arise without justification. This is refinement, not adding more discipline, but removing distortion. The mirror figure does not ask himself, "Am I disciplined?" That question belongs to someone who is not. He does not measure consistency. He moves consistently because inconsistency would feel unnatural. This is the difference between restraint and suppression. Suppression requires constant effort. Restraint is structural. It holds without strain. Now understand this clearly. When you begin to embody this state, people will misunderstand you. They will call you detached, or cold, or distant. But what they are sensing is your lack of reactivity. You are no longer offering emotional friction, no longer negotiating your presence, and this is unsettling to those who rely on noise to feel real. The mirror figure does not dominate rooms. He centers them. Conversations slow around him. Emotional spikes lose momentum. People either regulate or reveal themselves. This is power without assertion, authority without hierarchy, discipline without force. And here is the final truth. You were never meant to conquer yourself. You were meant to stop fragmenting yourself. The critical mind was never your ally, nor your enemy. It was a signal, a sign that something natural had been overmanaged, overcorrected, overjudged. When you remove the interference, what remains is not laziness, not chaos, not weakness. What remains is clarity. And clarity moves without noise. This is the discipline that cannot be shaken, not because it is rigid, but because it is whole. And once you experience this state, you will recognize the mirror everywhere. In the quiet man who speaks last, in the one who does not rush, in the presence that needs no validation. And eventually, you will recognize it in yourself. Not as something you achieved, but as something you stopped interfering with. And understand this as well. The moment you stop feeding the critical mind, you may feel exposed. There is a brief space where the old pressure is gone, but the new stability has not fully settled yet. Most people panic here. They mistake silence for loss of drive, calm for stagnation, neutrality for decline. So they rush back to self-criticism, back to urgency, back to internal force. But the samurai understood this pause. They knew that when noise leaves, power condenses. That stillness is not absence, it is gathering. If you can remain here, without reaching for pressure, without resurrecting the inner whip, something locks into place. Your actions become fewer, but more decisive. Your words become rarer, but heavier. Your presence stops asking permission. This is the moment inner steel finishes forming. This is discipline refined. See you next time. And as always, remember to stay in tune with your own mind frequency.